Welcome to What's the Story of Our History. I'm your host, Chris Pereira, together with Avtar and Shari, who are the independent historians. So, a little bit backstory on how this started. It was a conversation with a friend last year on digging into Sabah history a little bit more. And he introduced me to Shari and Avtar. And then I realized just how um, contorted is the word, I think, our mainstream history is, where it's based more on personal stories than it is facts and data. So with Shari and Aftar digging into history and literally finding all the documents to support what the actual facts of history are, it's a big learning curve for me. So I felt like I really don't know our history. So that's why we came up with what's the story of our history. And today we're going on a very important, very sensationalized, very everybody seems to like this topic. We're going to talk about the Sulu Claim. To kick it off, I think Shari can talk about what was the original treaty and agreement that started this whole debacle.
Hello everybody. Thank you for spending your time here and attending our podcast today. I will switch in Bahasa and in English. This journey took us about more than 20 years in terms of digging all this information. The reason being, most of the information is not available here in Sabah. And all this information, even until today, to this very day, this information is not available in Sabah. What I'm about to show you is a treaty dated 1877. We discovered a copy of this treaty from the National Archive of London. And today I prepared a few of this treaty. Those who attended, I will give a copy of the treaty. You can put in your house. This is like Magna Carta, This is the year, the date when Brunei hand over North Borneo to the two gentlemen over back and then. And this information should be included in our education system, and it was not there. So all our discussion today is a basis. The basis of our talk today is all based on the document that we discover along the years, and we discover not just one or two, we discover hundreds of documents, and they are not in our textbooks. So it's a bit sad because we lost our identity as a fellow Sabahan. So now what we're going to do here is we try to tell the story based on Sabah narrative, because I don't think a lot of people wanted to share information about their own history. So I started with what Chris said, treaty agreement. So there are events that took place in 1660, which is on the 17th century. And there is another event that took place in 1877 and 1878, of which a treaty between Brunei, Sulu, and the gentleman over back and then. So it's a very long story. I will start from 1660, and then you help me out filling all the missing chapters. So I would say that Sabah history is something like a lot of missing chapters. So what both of us are trying to do is to fill up the bit of pieces of missing chapters. If you go to an early books written by a lot of great historians in the past, they will start our history from mentioning something like Magellan. They mentioned about Magellan visited Brunei somewhere around 1500, and he saw riches. I mean, the writers are not Magellan himself, but I think the writers, and they already start the early conversation mentioning about Brunei. But when I'm not trying to say that Brunei is Brunei is something that we need to avoid, but Brunei is a nation where we need to understand their history and how they correlated to our history here in North Borneo. Back in 1660, what actually happened, there was a civil war between two sultans of Brunei. One named Sultan Akul Mubin, and the other one is Sultan Muhyiddin. Why this two sultan civil war very important to North Borneo history? Because that event took place in North Borneo, which is in Kinarut, in Papar, which is in North Borneo. There was a war for 12 years, very fierce battle, and it was not mentioned in our history.
Is this the Cermin War?
This is the Cermin War. And this, then when we heard about this information, then it made us start thinking what Brunei got to do about North Borneo, you see? How they get North Borneo. So we do further research, we found out that somewhere in the 15th century, Brunei attacked North Borneo, the entire North Borneo, I mean coastal area, not including the interior. Interior still consider terra nullius. So they attacked all the coastal area, they attacked the island, and they attacked the rivers, how far the river they can go. It's not just in North Borneo, they also did the same in Sarawak. So it took them 21 attempts, to conquer North Borneo. That's what Brunei did. And they have their armies, most of their armies are the sea people who actually travel. And then a lot of people say, hey, the Bajau is one tribe. But a lot of people cannot distinguish that the Bajau represent more than 100 tribes. So nobody explained this. And these Bajau tribes are actually everywhere from the east coast to the west coast. There are multiple tribes of the Bajau, you see. But until today, this Bajau also does not, I think they lost their identity. Some of them claim, oh, I'm from Southern Philippines, and I'm from West Coast, I'm from Sumatra, I'm from Johor. But in actual fact, they were already around this Eastern Archipelago for more than thousands years, So we can actually look from certain writing like Professor Andaya. He mentioned about the Orang Raut, and something happened back in 1699 where they dispersed. Back to the Sulu Claim. So now we know that Brunei occupied North Borneo, and there are two distinct things that we need to understand here. One is influence, and one is sovereignty. The influence of in certain part in the East Coast, there are actually visible influence of the Zulus, influence of Sultanate. But actually, Sulu, on the Sulu vessel, meaning the Datu occupy certain area in the East Coast. But in terms of sovereignty, there are no doubt that the entire North Borneo was once belonged to Brunei, except the interior, and they already surrendered the entire North Borneo from East Coast and North Coast. So if you look at Wikipedia, you can see two treaties, 1877, 1878. But that's not the entire treaty because you don't see the entire content. The 1877, there are 4 treaties plus 1 convention signed. So we only see 1 treaty. And the rest still kept in London. So nobody knew about it. And somebody already do something like, divide and rules. So meaning they want some area controlled by certain group and the West Coast controlled by certain group. And the treaty is available. And now with the advance of technology, digital technology, IT, I think everybody can access the document. No longer secret or kept in dark room somewhere in Kew Garden in London.
Where did you find the document?
I have a very difficult part in finding this document. It took me 20 years. I didn't find all this document. What I found is notes of saying that there are some treaties. but I didn't read the entire treatise. So it's a search, But of course, I got the entire document. I purchased myself from Kew Garden National Archive.
It's many documents.
Yes, so many documents.
Treaties.
Somewhere around 2019, when after asked who is Kumis, he said don't hide behind a fake name, a fake account. I said no. If I'm working in a bank, for your information, so Kumis is actually my pen name. While I'm thinking to retire and come out and tell people that I'm Shari Jeffrey, but I think after go and ask me, hey, you must tell everybody about what you found, which is quite interesting, he said. So I come out early. Then I think ever since we going around sharing to people about the history. Back to the war, 1660-1673. It took 12 years between the Sultan in Brunei and another Sultan of Brunei in Kinarut to wage war, and toward 1673, the Sultan in Brunei called for help from Sultan of Sulu. A lot of people, when they talk about Sultan Sulu, Sultan Brunei, they didn't actually establish the fact that all three of them are actually cousins, uncle, cousin. They are actually related. They are all three of them are all from the house of Bolkiah. So nobody actually explained the genealogy, who are actually the Sultan of Sulu and who is Sultan of Brunei in Kinarut and who is actually Sultan in Brunei. They are all cousins. So this is civil war, you see. So to understand who are they, back in 161600, the Sultan of Brunei, his name is Sultan Hashim. He actually he got three sons, distinguished sons. The elder he appointed as Sultan of Brunei. The second one he appointed as the first and the last Sultan of Sarawak. The first and last Sultan of Sarawak. And his youngest son, he appointed as the Sultan of Sulu. So this is information is very important, because without understanding this information, they create confusion as long as, because someone will say that, oh, they are independent, they are not related altogether. But this is a war during a feudal time immemorial. It's a feudal kingdom of which they have misunderstanding. So obviously, when the father passed away, the territory goes to the elder son, which is in Brunei. But of course, the younger son's family are not very happy about it, and also claim. But of course, there was a promise back in 1672. If you help us, we win the war, we will give you some portion of North Borneo. But what actually happened, they didn't send a huge troops or armies to help during the civil war. They just sent a very small groups of army headed by Two Lakshmana, and they didn't participate in the war.
The final battle.
The final battle.
Yeah.
So everybody thought that this group will help either group, because all of them are cousins and uncles. So eventually, after Sultan Hakul Mobil troops fell to lost the war, because he purposely don't want to fight anymore. The Sulu army and attacked Pula Chammo and confiscated all the war booty or war items, even the cannons and the people, and they took it all away to Sulu. And this way, the claim started, which is 1673. This is the actual date. But if you compare to notes from our fellow historian in the Philippines, they will put the date 1704, 1650, and a lot of dates which is not certain. And they claim that it was given to them. There's no such thing as given just by way of mouth back then, because the oldest university in Philippines already existed back then in 1600. And normally royalties are all learned people. They have learned people around them. They write letters, they communicate, they will issue letters to foreign diplomats and whatnot. So meaning, if Sultan Brunei would really want to give North Borneo, they should give them a letter, a proper letter saying, oh, okay, since you thank you for helping, I will hand over North Borneo to you. And to this very day, you cannot find this document. There's no such document ever produced, and the so-called Sultanate still around, Brunei is over that side, and Sulu on the other side. And this is the important, interesting point. We in Sabah, we do not know all this arrangement, the people of Sabah. Yeah. Because this arrangement is done between the feudal lords and the European powers. I mean, the Americans, the British, and the Spain. They do all this communication. Ordinary people, normal people, I think they are busy during that time, probably their own civil war, the headhunting, inter-tribal war, you see. So, come back to the issue. So now we already established that the Sulu Sultanate and the Brunei Sultanate are actually related. Mm-hmm. They are family members, there are internal disputes, somebody are not happy, probably they do not inherit East Coast of North Borneo. Secondly, there are no such document ever produced saying that Brunei hand over, because Brunei is still around. In fact, Sulu Claim asked Brunei now, asked them to produce a letter that I hand over North Borneo to you see. But that thing never happened. We wrote a book. In a book, the Sultan of Brunei mentioned when they were approached by delegates from Sulu, they were saying that no, we will honor our agreement with Overbeck, and then we already hand over the territory to Bot Overbeck then, and then subsequently the chartered company was established and they ruled North Borneo. So back to history, the proper administration of government started somewhere in 1881, 1882. This event took place 1660, which is about 200 years later. It never come out in any textbooks whatsoever. But again, people must understand, although we doesn't have a written history, our history actually written somewhere, but not in Sabah. We need to go out from Sabah. We probably have to visit certain country, certain European power countries where they already have information about North Borneo. So I think sufficient to say, what actually been highlighted today is a treaty dated 1878. They didn't talk about 1877. They just put one side 1877 treaty, focus 1878 treaty, and they use this 1878 treaty to keep on recycling this information and claiming North Borneo.
What's the difference between the two treaties? Any idea? Was it any written?
1877 treaty is a treaty between Sultan of Brunei and the Temenggung of Brunei with the gentleman Overbeck and then. That is the treaty dated 1877.
Okay.
And then 1870, that treaty dated 29 December 1877. Another treaty was signed in 1878, which is few weeks later, between Overbeck then and the Sultan of Sulu.
Okay.
I think if we ask Avtar, he will explain why there is another treaty signed in 1878. So Avtar, over to you.
Shari opened the door, I think, to... We actually got into this by accident a little bit, It wasn't something that we had planned to sort of research and look into. So, but we did. And Shari sort of looked at the documents and better understood what the agreements meant in the greater context of what was being given away or sold or ceded by Brunei to the Europeans. What I was curious about is why were there two sultans claiming Sabah? I'm going to use Sabah, I won't use the word North Borneo. Why were two people claiming to own Sabah at the same period of time? Why were two agreements signed, or grants as we call them, by the same Europeans with both sultans? So that was a very interesting sort of historical aspect that I started looking at. And it was just out of curiosity, why are they two people and stuff? The thing is, once you start digging and you start reading the agreements or the grants, and you look at the world around Brunei, what's going on in the Sultanate of Brunei, what's going on outside of Brunei, around what's going on around the coastlines of Sabah, and then you look at what's going on in the southern Philippines. There's so many things going on, and you have a better understanding of why they decided to sign, why it had to be signed on their part. You sort of realize they really had no choice. Once you get to 1877 for Brunei, Brunei is no longer the kingdom it once was. It no longer has the sphere of influence it once had over the coastlines and the rivers of Sabah, all the way around to the east coast. And whereas the Sulu, initially we had thought that they had been fighting, they've been fighting a 300-year war by that point in time, from the mid-1500s until then with the Spanish. But it was a war that was a stop-start war. The Spanish could never really sort of defeat all the different kingdoms in the southern Philippines. I don't talk about just one sultanate or one kingdom. It's many different kingdoms in the southern Philippines, Islamic kingdoms. And the Spanish were absolutely barbaric. I mean, in the greater context, you read the notes that they have and what happened there at period of time. It was a very barbaric period. So you cannot blame all these kingdoms for uniting and fighting against, in their mind, and oppression. It was just absolutely barbaric. And in the end, what was interesting about this also is that they all unite. Brunei unites with the Sulu, and all the different kingdoms in the southern Philippines, they all unite as one. Brunei was seen as sort of a leader amongst all of the kingdoms, as a center of Islam, center of study of Islam as well. And they all fought this war, but at some point in time, Brunei didn't really participate. The Spanish also sort of lost their way a bit. And what was interesting, all this time, what is interesting also is that it took an association, somebody that I knew from 1984, and I hadn't seen since 1988, to actually answer a lot of questions that we were trying to figure out. A guy called Mike Gibby, who is retired in Penang. He was my biology teacher in Singapore. And he had actually done extensive research independently, wrote a book called Crowned with Stars, which you can buy. It's available today and you can read it yourself. In that book, it's very, very important. He actually tells us why the Sulu had to sign the grant of 1878. They had no choice. And this is what we sort of discovered in 2020, 2021. So we already sort of figured out the reasons why. But what was interesting over the last year, and this is the interesting part, the fun part about history, is that we suddenly found more information, and that the Sultan of Sulu had been trying to barter. I use the word barter, trying to barter Sabah, going back even as far back as 1864. He had already started that attempt to sort of look for somebody to sort of say, how would you like to buy, or how would you like to own a territory? I can offer you 3 territories. I can offer you 3 places. I can offer you a place called Sandakan. I can offer you a place called Marudu, or I could offer you a place called Pulau Bangi. Which would you like? So he specifically targets the Prussians. So by this time, Germany is still a little bit of a sort of a wonderland of different kingdoms and so forth. But a lot of them are under the influence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian king. But the Prussians are a little bit more independent on their own. This is before Germany sort of comes together. And the Prussians are already in Southeast Asia. They have an embassy in Singapore. They are German traders in Southeast Asia. And an offer is made to the Prussians, Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm. Would you be interested in acquiring either Sandakan, Marudu, or Pulau Bangi? So the attempt to actually sell had already begun significantly earlier, before 1878. And so the question comes to why?
I want to add up a little bit on that part. When Obobeck came back in 1877, actually North Borneo is not only offered to Obobeck. There are another two more party actually interested on North Borneo. This is not written in any history book. The other party were actually interested in North Borneo, actually Cowie himself, but he doesn't have the fund to do the purchase of North Borneo from, I will tell the story from the American Trading Company. So this is another interesting part. So there was a treaty signed back in 1865, by the American. That treaty is for 10 years, 1865, 1875, and then the American didn't sign any treaty with the Sulu, He just signed a treaty, 1865 to 1875, for 10 years with the Sultan of Brunei. There is another treaty. So actually this treaty, 1877, actually is an extension of a new negotiation of a concession like North Borneo. And there are three parties interested. One of them will be Obobeck, a second party will be Cowie, and the third party is the Japanese government. The Japanese already interested on North Borneo as early as 1877, but they didn't manage to get their government approval. Instead, they are occupying Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken, on top there, instead of going further down south, because they come to a Japanese revolution, something like that, industrialization. So this information never linked. That's why I say the history of North Borneo is actually bits and pieces. There are no continuation of these chapters. Cowie obviously already do trading with the Sulu, and he already make some payment to the Sulu Sultanate so as nobody disturb their trades. So he got a brother. His name is Alan Cowie. Alan actually worked with the Sulu Sultanate as interpreter. So with this connection, they actually convinced Obobeck, hey, since you want to do trade and you want to bring a lot of ships coming from Hong Kong, from China, passing this way, because traders from Hong Kong and China prefer the Sulu Sea compared to the South China Sea because of the monsoon. Over this side, if they come down from this side, it's much more easier for them to travel all the way to Australia in terms of trades, So they don't want all this shipping lane and trades being disturbed, and
they didn't. Yeah, the shipping lane to be disturbed, especially the British. They were very, very worried about the shipping lane being controlled by one European party.
We need to understand in Sarawak we have James Brooke, of which he have different vision altogether. Both are actually people from Britain, and they have their own vision how they want to develop their own area. So James Brooke vision in one day I will make sure the people of Sarawak learn about democracy and about self-rule and whatnot. But somewhere over this side, the chartered company, they are focusing about economic development, profits, and development. Of course, they do a lot of interesting things. One of the questions I was asked earlier, there's a lot of civil war ongoing between tribes. Without the arrival of the Western power, I think the population of North Borneo, I think, will diminish. I mean, we will still kill each other, a lot of people asking me, hey Shari, why people of Sabah very nice, very calm, very, easy to work with? Because this is a restrained passion, because they have been involved, their ancestors have been involved in civil war, killing each other for so many 100 years. So they learn how to restrain themselves. So by being nice to people, because they don't want to anger other people. So this is a trait that we heard about Sabah people. Oh, we sideline a bit. Okay, let's continue.
That's all right.
Yeah,
That's interesting though. That's all right.
I'm going to pivot a bit back to what Avtar was saying. I want to not know lah. The barter was between Sandakan, Mardu, and Pulau Bangi, right?
Yeah.
Why was it these three that was of interest?
So okay, what's technology? Everything changes in 1848 after Labuan. So Labuan, a year earlier, Labuan is ceded by Brunei to the British. But then technology suddenly appears in Southeast Asia, and it's called a steamship. So gunboats, warships are no longer dependent on just on sail and wind. They actually have the ability to move without the wind. So technology changes everything, especially for the Spanish. They bring in steam gunboats, and they're now able to go down south without waiting for the winds anytime they want, and they're able to go to war any time of the day or night. And 1846, so I'm going back a little bit in time, right? This is going to lead us forward. And we didn't know all this till the last 6 months. So I said, these missing pieces we're finding more and more as we go along. 1848, the Spanish have this new technology, steam. 1846, James Brooke signs an agreement of trade and friendship with the Sulu.
And Brunei also.
And Brunei. But this alarms the Europeans, especially the Spanish. Like, why is Britain getting involved? Why are you signing an agreement with them? We're at war with these guys. So the British government then sort of backtracked and said, hang on a minute here, we don't want to get involved in this. So even though James Brooke signs this agreement, it's never rectified by the British government. But it's a prelude of what's to come. The Spanish then go out and hammer Holo Island, where the Sulu Sultanate is. They invade it, they destroy the towns and villages on Holo Island in 1851. 1851, the Sultan of Sulu is forced to sign an agreement, the Treaty of 1851, whereby he has to recognize the sovereignty of the Spanish over the Sulu Sultanate and Holo Island. He signs this agreement. And this is really, now we're going back in time from 1878, because it's just reconfirming what we already know. Because while the Spanish have an agreement writing saying, okay, I agree, I recognize Spain, you have sovereign rights over my island and my sultanate, the Sulu have this habit of going back again and saying, oh, actually, no, that agreement doesn't really mean that. It means that they may have a little bit of control over it. So this, it's kind of like somebody signing an agreement, say, I'm going to sell you my house. Sampai rumah sudah kena jual sama kamu. Okay, thank you. Actually, then he goes and tells his relatives, no lah, saya tidak jual. Saya kasih sewa saja sama orang. I just rented it to them. You see the difference between selling and renting. It's two totally different things. And it just carries on until 1878, where after signing this agreement, they then start telling everybody, and in their minds, oh, no, we actually never ceded it. We actually just leased it. So this is where it sort of begins. And then we thought the war between, the last war, I call it the last war between the Spanish and the Sulu Sultanate. Originally, we thought it actually started in 1875. It didn't. This particular battle started in 1871. And the Spanish decide to do something very naughty. They do two things. Number one, they introduce a blockade around Holo Island. So nothing can get in and out of Holo Island. It's a small island. It's not a very big island. It's much smaller than even Pulau Bangi in Sabah. But the thing is that at some point in time, you can't keep 10 warships there for an entire year or 2 years. So the numbers start to decline. They have 1 or 2 ships. And this is where Cowie comes into the picture. William Cowie, the Scotsman. And he's in business partnership with Germans from Singapore. And they form a company in Labuan called the Labuan Trading Company. They have a company in Singapore, and they are smuggling weapons. They're smuggling rice. Holo Island is going through a period of starvation because of this blockade. So they're doing a lot of smuggling. And it opens doors to a lot of things to do with even Sandakan as well. And in this period of time, what's interesting is that the Germans established Kampung German in Sandakan. So what does this tell us? It tells us by now the Brunei Sultanate has lost its sphere of influence on the East Coast, whereby Germans can now come into Sandakan and establish a trading post, and there's nobody to stop them. So that gives us a little bit of insight to what had happened to Brunei by that period of time. So not only do the Spanish have this blockade of Holo Island, they start sinking any trading vessel that they find going to Holo Island or leaving Holo Island. So this cuts off all trade into Holo. So what happens when somebody starts cutting off trade into your shop? You have a little shop, you're doing trade, you're selling rice, you're selling essential goods, and people stop coming to your shop. You get poor, you run out of money eventually, right? You can't pay your army, you can't pay money to buy weapons and so forth.
I want to add a little bit.
Yeah.
When we say Brunei lost their sphere of influence, but they try to regain their influence again by way of asking the help of James Brooke and the British Armada to attack Kota Marudu in 1845. They attacked Kota Marudu. At that time, Kota Marudu population of 50,000 people. They have a naval force as big as about 5,000 troops. It was actually destroyed by the British naval forces. That was in 1845. And in 1846, the same naval force attacked Tempasok, Abai, Pandasan, which is in North Borneo. They claim that they actually try to they attack pirate positions, but all these people are actually supporter of Sharif Osman. In 1851, the naval force, the British Armada also attacked Tunku, which is in Lahadatu. So this is what we can say, that the Brunei also tried to regain their influence. And then when William Pryor opened up the settlement in Ilopura, they were threatened by the Sulu. And those local people, of which a former supporter of the Brunei administration, are actually the one who came to the defense of William Pryor. So this information never really shared, because it was never written, and it was not in our textbook. And again, before we go on front and back, because we want to share some vital information. For example, when the Chartered Company was established somewhere in 1882, they doesn't immediately able to administer the entire North Borneo, so they're having a lot of challenges. They signed more than another 27 treaties, to occupy quite a number of other territories. So their station was in Gaya. They cannot move to the Sultan, Some big events happened, which is in 1897 when Mat Saleh burned Pulau Gaya. And there were a series of treaties signed between Brunei, Pangeran, and Kowe. And there is also another big challenge here they are facing. They cannot actually establish rules in the interior. So if we compare notes and information that we gather, they send Mat Saleh to Tambunan. So this information was not actually clear in our history. Why Kowe banished a rebel to Tambunan, And of course, when he was in Tambunan, he was promised a position by Kowe to actually partner with another tribe and attack another tribe, of which already have long civil war between each other, you see. So when the other party losing ground, they asked for the help of the chartered company for help. And that's where the final battle happened in 1900 in Tambunan. So back then, since Gaya was born in 1897, treaty signed 1898, then they moved to Sultan, which is in 1899. So you see, there's a lot of information that we need to put back in pieces, so as that people will understand the big picture, what actually happened. In order to open up Sultan, sorry.
That's all right.
In order to open Sultan, more than 1,000 houses of the local people have to be burned and destroyed to open Sultan. The land was occupied by the chartered company, and all these people were paid 3 ringgit, $3 by that time to $15, and they were removed. And this information was not mentioned in the opening up of Sultan. So this is a story of which we need to highlight so as that they know whatever things that actually happened, there are backstory about it, and we must know about this story for us confident enough to move forward and create our own identity.
Just a few things we talk about that. We have to realize, Chris, we have to realize that once Brunei has conquered all the different communities along the coastlines of Sabah on the west coast, on the north and the east coast, our coastline in Sabah becomes an extension of the Brunei Sultanate. It expands north and around the east coast, possibly up to Kawi Bay, what is today Kawi Bay, right? So it becomes an extension, a part of Brunei. It's not sort of Brunei conquering and then, establishing armies and all that. And, like I said, Shari's, every little thing that we've done over the last 5-6 years has sort of come together to help us to better understand what transpired during that period. Shari's heritage, for example, we've sort of discovered that his ancestors came from the Riau Linggi Islands in the Singapore, old Singapura. And there was a migration in waves over a period of time from that period into the coastlines of Sabah. And they became a very important part of the Brunei Sultanate because they formed the backbone of the Brunei Navy. And this allowed them to also then conquer the Philippines, the northern Philippines, and to establish a system of tribute payments in the south of Philippines.
This is where I try to explain, to understand history. We cannot just look from Sulu perspective or not Borneo perspective. We have to go bigger, geopolitical. So meaning we need to know the origin of Sultan Hashim of Sulu, and we need to understand the origin of Sultan Kebongsuan of Mindanao, Philippines. And when we look at Sabah now, we are already divided by geopolitical, by European power. But when we go back in time, say about 600 years ago, Philippines and North Borneo are actually one country. We already divided. It's like, northern and southern, So we are a huge country, of which divided by European country. They are actually the Netherlands, the Dutch took over the south of Borneo. The British took Sabah, Sarawak, and Brunei. I mean, when I say took, is actually administered these 3 countries, and Spain actually administered Philippines. Even changed the name Manila into King Philip's name, which is Philippines.
And then the Americans came.
And then Americans came. So what we are trying to say here, in order to better understand our history, we need to put all this information that we share today into our textbooks. We need to go back into what actually happened the last 600 years before the arrival of this chartered company. Because you see, when chartered company came, they ruled until 1941. The Japanese came, they occupy, and then a lot of people who actually know about earlier history are no longer with us. So then after that, the Crown Colony ruled us from 1946 until 1963, where they hand over the administration of North Borneo to form the Federation of Malaysia. But before they did that, there are thousands of documents that contain how our history was destroyed. You know, somebody burned all the documents. So
it was a government policy, wasn't it? At that
it
time?
was a policy
Before the handover.
Before the handover to burn. There was, we calculate there are actually supposed to be 6,000 files in our Sabah archive. 5,000 files was burned. You know, so meaning whoever administered Sabah back in 1963, we cannot blame like historian because they doesn't have a master index. When I say master index, they do not know what documents that have, or what type of files kept by the chartered company or the crown colony. So whatever documents that you found in archive, that's it. You know, that is our history. So if you know 5,000 files was burned, when we searched the document, we found out there's a lot of interesting information. There's a lot of, we now understand why this information was kept somewhere in locked room, because it contained a lot of sensitive information about prosecution of villages, land dispute, land taken from villages, entire tribe was executed. So a lot of this information was not actually written in textbooks. And we are blessed again, back in 2012, the British government actually come out with an enactment of which all historical documents must be surrendered to the National Archive. Even document belong to M16, you know, which is
MI6.
MI6 must be surrendered to the National Archive. And since then, we are able to gather all this information, and it's not just us. Anybody can go there, walk in, and just get a copy of this information.
But you need to know what you're looking for.
You must know what you're looking for. And again, you must also share all this information. But what we're trying to do here is actually, while we're talking about the Sulu Claim, we also need to establish the fact that we need to bring back all these documents. We need to make sure our generation and the future generation are able to read, understand what is the content of all this documentation that has been destroyed. And we must bring back all this information to Sabah. I just give a few examples. For example, I took one file, a story about Antanom Murut, war in Keningau. We heard about Antanom, a lot of people talking about Antanom, which is a great hero and whatnot. But before Antanom became the leader, there is another warrior by the name of Blayong. Between Blayong and Antanom, which appear in the same time, at the same period, nobody talk about Blayong, another famous Murut warrior, but somebody talk about Antanom. You see, to me, the story is incomplete. Antanom was elected to become a Murut war leader because of Blayong. Blayong was actually a Murut chief, was asked to do the trail. What they call it? The trail? The jungle trail.
Cut a trail.
Yeah. But he come to a location where that area was considered sacred to the community. So he refused to do a trial on that area. But again, the chartered company actually hunted him and burned every village from that place to even somewhere into Kalimantan in search of this guy, Blayong. He was never captured. He was never arrested. He disappeared. But again, because of this, the Murut raised in rebellion and attacked the chartered company station in Rundum. Yeah. And this is part of story that I can establish from one file. you just imagine there are 6,000 farms, there are many other stories of which we can share to the younger generation, and they would be proud that their ancestor was mentioned and validate their existence on that area, why they become ketua kampung, and why, because their ancestor fought a war, they become very distinguished in the sense that they already contribute to their society and whatnot.
But this changes the Antanom story, doesn't it? All this while, again, I'm not extremely knowledgeable about the Antanom War against the Chartered Company, but all this while we always thought that it was just him attacking the Chartered Company station, but we don't know the backstory as to why, what angered them and what forced them into rebellion, right?
Exactly.
It was a very different version of history.
Correct.
But once you add the other war hero into the story, everything changes, right?
Exactly.
And then you suddenly realize, oh, they actually had even more good reason to rebel.
Back to so if we were to relate this story to the Sulu story, the Sulu Claim story, whatever we read or understand is what the headlines, those actually written by reporters, what actually written by diplomats, politicians. That's what you want people to read, to understand, but they don't want to tell the actual story or what we are telling people today. The actual story is actually a civil war between family, and they never come to inherit that place, and they claim that area.
I'm going to go slightly off a little bit.
Okay, go.
Colonialism. Okay, what would have happened to Sabah if the Chartered Company had not purchased Sabah? Where would our people have been at that? And I'm going back in time, just for that period of time, right? All the intertribal wars would have probably continued. We wouldn't have had a system of government. We wouldn't have had law and order. We wouldn't have had native land titles. We wouldn't have had infrastructure such as railway connection from Jesselton into Tenem. We wouldn't have had education, which the missionaries brought in originally. We wouldn't have had health and medicine, which again was very limited in the early years, very limited. What would Sabah have been like?
I think they kill each other to.
But you see, at the end of the day, like it or not, they actually put an end to the headhunting and the intertribal wars and said, "Stop it, enough. You guys have got to get along. This cannot carry on." Would that be a correct assessment?
Yes, that's a correct assessment. That's why we need to be fair in history as well. There are something bad happen, there's something good, but everything must be shared. And everybody need to analyze and what is the good and the bad part of actually what happened in the past. Again, another story that I want to share, one of the files that we discovered from London is a story about Omadal Island, which is in Borneo. A lot of people probably asking, who is these people, the Bajau Kubang of Omadal. If you visit Omadal Island, you will find a lot of those intricate carving or in the island, the intricate carving of burial places. And these arts are actually quite similar from other country, which is not in Philippines, which is from Aceh, Sumatra. And you will establish that when Sultan Hashim become a Sultan of Sulu, he bring his own army.
Hashim is from?
Actually, Sultan Hashim of Sulu was the son of Sultan Shari Zainal Abidin. And Shari Zainal Abidin wife is actually the daughter of Sultan Johor.
What period?
Somewhere around 1400.
Okay, so going back in time.
We go back in 1400s. Yeah. So you will know that he brings his own people here, and then the Tausuk become the secondary army to the original Sultan's army, because normally he will put he circle himself with his own people. But later part, when intermarriage happened between the clan, the Tausuk took over from the Bajau, which is the supposed household guard of the royal family, and these people actually later on moved to Omadal Island. And Omadal Island was not actually well liked by the chartered company because a lot of those trade from East Coast goes to Omadal Island. So I think the governor decided, why don't we open up Semporna and how about we open up Tawau? So why don't we move the people from Omadal to Semporna? So you see, all this information are actually contained in that file in London, you see. And they appointed a person by the name of Maharaja Santatuna, who opened up Semporna. And Semporna means perfect. And when we mention who is Maharaja Santatuna to the now new generation, they do not know who is the person Maharaja Santatuna. Maharaja Santatuna, actually the person who actually established the first trade in Semporna. He was given a mandate to fly chartered company flag, and he made a go down, and then he made a long jetty for which to establish trade in Semporna. But this information not available. We only look at subsequent information. There is also another person by the name of Panglima Lohari of Semporna. He helped the chartered company establish rule in Semporna, a settlement, but later he was arrested and prosecuted in Sandakan after he helped the chartered company establish their rules. And this information are not available in our history book. So we are moving toward that direction. Apart from this podcast, we are writing book. I'm writing more than 300 articles about our local Sabah history, and we are about to share all this information to the general public, so as that hopefully one day all this information will be available in our history textbooks.
Chris, I'm going to just finish this question that you started in the beginning so that you can move on to your next question. I'm just going to say one thing. I'm going to go back to the original question that you originally had for Shari about the Pula Chammo War and why it's so complicated. The Pula Chammo War historically was never documented, i.e. it was written in a history book or in a journal. Everything we know about the Pula Chammo War has been passed through storytelling and folklore, tales and poems that have been passed down from generation to generation. And so we don't know, as Shari said earlier, what was promised between the families, between the cousins. As you know, it was a family dispute, first of all. Secondly, it comes down to what transpired on that final day of the actual battle on Pulau Cermin. So that there are two narratives, and this sort of justifies why Brunei doesn't recognize these claims or did not recognize the claims. The Bruneian version is that when the final battle happened, the Sulu didn't come to help as promised. So the battle was completed. Sultan Mubin committed suicide, to my understanding, and the island was captured, the royal palace was captured, and then that was the end of it. So that's one version. Now the second version, which seems possible and seems viable, is that the battle had been completed and then the Sulu arrived at the end of the battle, after Sultan Mubin and his followers had been defeated. And they ransacked the palace. They captured the wives and the children of Sultan Mubin and took them back to Hollow Island, or the Sulu Sultan.
Her name is Bo Angsa.
Yeah.
Bo Angsa is the name of the Sultan wife that have been taken to Sulu.
But he was not the first wife.
Yeah, not the first wife, the second wife. Yeah.
And then what's ironic, 10, 20 years later, the Sulu sent somebody back to Brunei to ask for an actual agreement. Can we please have an agreement that you promised to give us?
They're not Borneo.
Yeah. And the person that they sent is?
The son of Sultan Akul Mubin, the second wife. So the son came over. His name is
Dracula.
Datuk Dakula. Yeah. Datuk Dakula actually was the son of Sultan Akul Mubin from the second wife. And he bring an army to attack Brunei, so as that the Brunei give back not Borneo to them. This is not recorded in any of the Sulu history book, but again, in Brunei history, it was mentioned. And when Datuk Dakula approached Brunei with his army, Brunei sent his army headed by Pangeran Amir. And eventually, two armies met in the middle of the sea, and the two had met, and they found out both of them are actually brothers, siblings. So instead of Datuk Dakula attack Brunei and claim Borneo, he was appointed by Brunei as the Pangeran Temenggung, meaning the head of armed forces, naval forces. So you see, that's how close Sulu and Brunei. Instead of going to war, since you are a family member, why don't we put you into the government? Government of the day, So we appoint you to become the most important post, which is head of the Pangeran Temenggung, which is head of naval force. So no need to fight war. I give you all the armies. So it is a sign of respect and to validate that they are family members. That is so interesting.
End of the day, nobody goes back. No letter or agreement goes back to the Sulu to say yes, we gave it. So it's just a matter of perception which you choose to believe.
So there are famous historians in Philippines. We don't want to mention them. They mentioned that the date of actual handover was dated 1704 by the Brunei to the Sulu. So we search, we read every document, we search every book, we look at every manuscript, whatever diary, journal, where this 1704 came from. And we found out that the person who mentioned 1704 was none other than Alexander Drampil. And Alexander Drampil mentioned in that diary, he said, probably was given to the Sulu Sultanate somewhere in 1704, of which far away from the actual battle, which is in 1673. So this is an assumption, and every historian after that repeat 1704. So you see, they never really dig document like what we did. What they did is just refresh and reset what somebody have said earlier on. And some go even further. 1658, that was the date when Brunei given away North Borneo to them. 1658 was not even the start of the battle yet, you see. The battle started in 1670, you see. So 12 years before the battle. So there are some inaccuracy and of the statement, but moving forward, what makes it more challenging at this point of time that we need to look and consider was an 1878 agreement treaty using modern legal approach of looking into the documents, you see. So that creates a lot of confusion, because while we are talking about history, there are another chapter of this of which we will not cover is the legal aspect of it, because this will be covered by the legal expert looking into those documents. What we are trying to share today is more on the historical story perspective and the correct perspective, because to tell you the truth, until today, there are still people saying that no, east coast of Sabah belong to Sulu, of which we would like to deny this statement. That is inaccuracy, and they even never look at some documents.
But this is not a personal opinion, though. This is based on historical research.
Document.
Did the Sulu Sultanate have a system? How do you justify somebody claiming that they own a territory or they own a place? They would have a system of administration. They would have a system of government. Did the Sulu Sultanate have either of these on the east coast of Sabah? No, there's no evidence of it. All right, so administration, no. System of government, no. But taxation.
No palace.
No palace, no nothing. Are they collecting taxes and tribute from communities on the East Coast? Yes, they are. But there's a backstory to that. So, but anyways, Chris, we'll defer to you.
No. Again, let me add.
Okay.
When they have a small settlement, they actually control the mouth of the river. So every mouth of the river, like Sugut, Kinabatangan, at the entrance of the river, they create a settlement there. So what they did was they collect tax.
This is a Brunei, but this was introduced by Brunei though.
This Brunei introduced it, but
or maybe Majapahit. We're not so sure, but definitely Brunei. We know the period though that it was introduced, right?
So then, when you read the story written by, I read the book written by James Francis Warren. Actually, the settlement was like a blockade, like a well-guarded place with, it's not like you rule based on just normal settlement like that, So meaning they force people to pay tax with them. They kill people who do refuse to pay tax. They confiscated people's items. So they use East Coast as their procurement area, and that's it. They doesn't want to rule. They actually just want to collect
taxes.
Taxes and goods from
money.
Yeah. You talk about money.
I think that answers my question on why the agreement didn't evolve.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna ask, because we're already 1 hour in. I'm gonna partially wrap this up. This one is a very opinion-based lah. Okay. I know you guys are very not sketchy, like very facts-based. But I want personal opinion from the both of you. On how this could have been handled better, this whole Sulu Claim thing. Because it's from 1800s until now and it's still not settled, right? From your personal opinion?
We start with Avtar first.
Yes. And this is just personal opinion, it's not facts, it's not how things should have been done.
No, it's based on, but it has to be
opinion.
based on facts. I cannot just give an opinion from the top of my head. It has to be based on what I've read in documents, what I've seen precedents over a period of time, what has been transpiring. It's looking at documents of communication, the North Borneo Chartered Company, when they're communicating with the board of directors and the governor and what they're telling each other about the particular situation that's going on in between sort of 1910, 1920, forward till 1936, 37, when the last Sultan of Sulu dies. And he has no offspring, he has no children. Even though he has a huge entourage of wives, he doesn't have any children. Firstly, we must clarify, was it a lease or was it a sale and purchase agreement? Like you would when you buy property, sell property, you're buying an apartment, a house, you sign a sale and purchase agreement with the seller. You may take a loan, you may not take a loan, you may buy in cash. If you read the grant of 1878, if in your mind this transaction was a lease, and you look at the terms and conditions in the grant of 1878, and it's the same for the Brunei grant 1877, they're almost a replica of each other, but the Bruneians are smart. They add one particular caveat in there. That caveat is, if you don't pay me for 3 years, I have every right to take back Sabah or any territory and so forth. So they put that caveat in. That caveat is not found in the grant that is signed with the Sulu in 1878, 22nd of January 1878. And if you look at the terms and conditions in this particular grant, you're looking at it and you're like, how is this a lease? It doesn't favor the person who claims to own the territory and is leasing the territory. It's so one-sided. It favors the person who is purchasing or leasing the territory in every single way. I'll give you some examples. Number one, there's no exit clause, meaning that the Sultan of Sulu cannot say, oh, I decided I don't want to continue this lease, I'm going to terminate the lease and take back my territory. There's no exit clause. It is forever. Secondly, what's also fascinating is that there is no avenue for the rent or lease to be increased at any point in time. It remains fixed at that sum, 5,000 straight dollars. It doesn't change.
I also want to wish to clarify here, when we talk about Sulu Claim, we want to clarify that both me and Avtar are not anti-Sulu, or we are not, we don't say that Sulu people are bad, we are not anti-Sulu. What we're trying to establish here is actually back few hundred years ago, Sulu was part of Borneo people. They have their house here and they occupy this area. But with the advance of modernization, they are divided through geopolitical borders. In fact, this is where the confusion starts. In fact, they always say, Sabah belong to us. I never disputed, both of us never disputed, they are from Borneo. They are once Borneo people. But again, they have to make a decision. There are a couple of decisions they have to make. Firstly, before the establishment of chartered company, they must be here, and they become Borneo citizen. The second option will be when chartered company establish the administration, they can move here and become Borneo citizen. Thirdly, during the Japanese occupation and the establishment of Crown Colony, they can actually move here and apply to become Borneo citizen. And after 1963, they can apply with the Malaysian government to become the Borneo citizen. And when we talk about this immigration matter, it's not just us. Back in 1846, before 1963, not Borneo people are considered, you can apply citizenship in the British citizenship back in 1946 to 1963. Actually, you can become British citizen back then because you are a member of Commonwealth country. So meaning you also can become citizen to any of the Commonwealth country by applications, but the Sulu people, probably they are misinformed or they are uneducated or probably they do not know. They never do all this sort of thing. So at the end of the day, every country have their own set of immigration rule. They cannot just already simply say, because of ancestral right, that land belong to us. You cannot depend on history because you have every opportunity to say to become the citizen of Borneo or Sabah. So we are not attacking certain race here, Sulu race. We are not saying that, Sulu bad, they will want to claim Sabah and whatnot. We are saying that whatever we establish today is based on historical fact that you were once, the Sulu people were once a people of North Borneo. They were once the army of Brunei Army Naval Force. They was a member of Brunei Naval Force. And they cannot deny that they were once Brunei Naval Force. But again, when Brunei lost their influence, they become, they declare their own independence and they become self-rule and claiming other people territories,
I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to know the law and legal international law. But looking at everything that has transpired, looking at the documents and trying to understand the history of what has transpired, I think the question you're asking, Chris, is have we been paying rent or whatever it is every year? Is that the question that you're asking? Yeah. I think we should have stopped a very long time ago.
We actually can stop the payment as early as 1946 when the Crown Colony took over. And we also actually can, because Crown Colony can say to the chartered company, that's your problem. You are the one who make the treaty. You close it to the chartered company. Or the Crown Colony, when they hand it over to the Malaysian government, they actually can stop because we are actually established based on referendum. The people have spoken. They say, no, we want to become part of Malaysia and we do not accept all this sort of thing. I mean, claim
ownership,
proprietary rights of certain feudal kingdoms. And if we were to continue doing so, this is an abuse of legal system and abuse of historical information, claiming it will open actually a Pandora of claim everywhere around the world, saying that my ancestor used to own that island and I want to establish my settlement there now in 2024. So I mean, please keep this as historical information and look at it from additional information perhaps was not being shared to them in the past, and they were advised by some people who do not share this information. When we look at the affidavit, some of this information was not in the affidavit. And that's not transparent. You're cherry picking information that you put in affidavit, but you remove all these other documents in the document. So if you ask how to how to better handle this one, firstly, we have to make sure every people in Sabah have to agree that there are one history, or what we call it Sabah history, Sabah narrative. That's what we need to agree. But because there are still people who still confused, because they never seen this document. And for those who attended today, this is a copy of this agreement, and there are hundreds of them. I mean, from one location after another. But at least you can see that this is a copy of important document that actually supposed to be in our textbooks.
So with that, I'm gonna wrap this up. Really wrap this up, because we've gone and I think an hour 30. Hour 16. Correct. So any parting words before?
I think since we have a guest here,
any questions from the floor?
We open the Q&A session if there is any question that you want to ask. So we will try our level best. The only question that I will not answer will be legal aspect of it, because I'm not a lawyer. I cannot answer. And then this is an ongoing legal matter. So there's a bit sensitive for me to talk about the legal matter. But as far as historical information, please feel free to ask anything.
Anyone?
Apa-apa
aja?
Okay.
My name is Rosman. Supporting.
Okay, Pak.
I have two questions.
Okay.
I think I should say question. First one is
To who? To Shari or to Avtar? Or to both of us? Okay.
The establishment of chartered company in 1891 based on three bases. First, the agreement overpaid with Brunei. Second, the agreement overpaid with Sulu. And the third one is the charter awarded by the Queen to the chartered company. So the third basis, they did mention that the native agree to surrender, you can say, the sovereign to the British. So it means that we are too emphasized on these two sultanates, but we forget that the local people, the native people also agree the chartered company govern the North Borneo at that time. Maybe.
I will volunteer to answer this. This is my area of research. Before 1881, during the transition, the local native actually not very happy with the Brunei rules because they asked for high taxations.
They're overtaxing.
And they are clear some area was not actually governed by the Brunei Sultanate, but they put an administrator, and the administrator abused their power. So all these local people, before the chartered company came about, they are no longer happy with the Brunei. For example, in Penampang, we have Bois Kolintangon. It's a rebellion, of which they fought against the Brunei forces. And some local native actually fought against Brunei somewhere in Klias there, which is somewhere around 18, from your area, Mempakul. They are a rebellion, or we have a representative from Mempakul. Yeah. the rebellion happened over that. So local people already not very happy with the administration of the Brunei Sultanate, and they are more than happy to accept new ruling from the chartered company, of which promised a lot of things, like modernization.
Are we talking about coastal indigenous peoples or interior?
Both.
Okay.
Of course, the indigenous already from the very beginning attack any Bruneian who actually go to the interior. So they have no chance of administrating the interior. Interior we consider terra nullius, no man land. It was administered by the few tribes. They have their own small government. When I say government, what type of government they have? I will touch on that on a later stage. But again, to answer your question, the native disagree. What you say is absolutely correct. When they submit chartered approval from the British government, they submit all the treaty. This treaty, the treaty with Brunei, the treaty with the Sulu, the friendship agreement that in 1846-47, and they also clearly stated in that phrase, there are special phrase in 1881. They say, obviously there are two claims of Borneo, one by the Sulu and one in their letter of application for the charter. And the other one is from the Brunei. We believe Brunei have greater claim of sovereignty of Borneo in that letter. And but for Sulu, for the East Coast, they have greater influence. That's why I say from the very beginning, the chartered company already established the fact that sovereignty fall under the Brunei Sultanate, but in terms of influence, they have influence on the East Coast. But that influence is by way of force. So I hope that answer your three questions.
Can I?
I
just add a little bit about the charter. It's very interesting. It's basically a formal announcement by a monarchy to everybody that hear ye, I have granted the British North Borneo Company status of a charter status, and they shall rule this particular territory. And what's interesting in the actual charter that comes out, it actually, the powers over North Borneo and Sabah, even though in our mind and in the documents it shows that the company had exclusive rule over Sabah, if you actually read the charter, the powers actually lie with the Secretary of State of the British Crown, or Great Britain. He actually has the final say on everything, though we don't really see any interferences from the time the company takes over until 1946. There's no real intervention by them, but the Crown has actually final say on almost everything that goes on in Sabah, but they don't intervene. And the most powerful person in the entire system of North Borneo and Sabah, it's actually not the board of directors for the chartered company. It is not the governor of Sabah. It's actually the Crown and the Secretary of State of Great Britain.
I want to add some more. Chartered company, British North Borneo Chartered Company was the last chartered company in the British chartered system. It was the last. Yeah. We also need to look from United States. We have another Hudson River chartered company, and they deal with fur trades, and that fur trades in Hudson River in US. And of course, when they deal with fur trades, they kill a lot of animals, and they fought against the native, and that's created the civil war in the American. So same goes to the chartered company. A lot of people ask me, why the chartered company doesn't continue on rule North Borneo after the Second World War. But in actual fact, there was already a discussion in the parliament saying that that's the last chartered company, we need to put it to stop, we need to put the proper government in place, rather just a company who are dealing with trades and whatnot, we need to set up a proper set of government here in North Bonio. That is a period where there's a lot of distinguished gentlemen in the Crown Colony who actually helped to establish a lot of locations here in Sabah and help to develop, and they are very fond of North Borneo, and when I met some of them, I mean those that I able to meet many years ago, I went to a place and I met a person from York, and when I mentioned about North Borneo, he said, "Hey Shari, I have a few thousand documents that I kept about North Borneo. Since you like so much about North Borneo and you're passionate enough about North Borneo, I'm 80 plus, 90 plus years old. I give it all the document to you, you see."
Those are the parliamentary ones, right?
The parliament document.
Which we never had access to here. Yeah.
So, and he also gave me quite a number of booklet produced by Chartered Company. The booklet is actually like a brochure to investor. You must come to North Borneo because North Borneo is a good place for you to invest. There's a lot of interesting thing in where you can make a lot of profit. So in actual fact, they sell North Borneo to investors, so as that investor come over to North Borneo. So that answer your chartered, what is chartered all about. So British North Borneo Chartered Company is the last establishment of chartered company of British until 1941.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just add one little bit to finish this question. The Crown, it's not the chartered company, it's the Crown, the British Crown that actually put some certain terms and conditions. We shall grant you this charter. Number one, you will respect the religion and the beliefs of the natives or the peoples of the land. So that comes in very early. You shall not interfere with their beliefs and you shall pay the people that you have purchased this property from. That clause is in there as well. These two things were very significant moving forward.
I read one of the file 1946, the Crown Colony, when they are about to take over the administration of Borneo. They disagree. They don't want to pay the Sulu Claim, It doesn't pay. I do not know what transpired to make somebody say yes and we should pay. They keep on saying the one who promised to make payment is not us. The one who make promise is the chartered companies. Why should we inherit this? Actually, there was an agreement prepared by the lawyers of chartered company. If they make certain payment to the before the handover, 1946, they prepared an agreement to give to the family of the Sulu Claim. Okay, I pay you certain amount, which is certain amount you sign this agreement, please don't claim anymore. But you see, the lawyer of the Sulu Sultanate advised them otherwise. They actually, the lawyer was from Chicago, from US, and of course during the World War, there was a big battle there, and there's a promise by General MacArthur, I'll be back. So after they back and they fought against the Japanese, they helped the Philippine government to claim certain territory here in North Borneo, and they managed to claim some territory, which is the Mangsi Island. So if you look at Sabah map, I do not know if there is a Sabah map. Oh, there's Sabah map there. If you look at the Sabah map on the east coast, the continental shape or the border should be straight line, But instead of straight line, it curved a little bit. That is the job of, after the Second World War, they managed to claim some of the island. But that some of that island was actually doesn't belong to the British Chartered Company, but they only administered that area. So it's very clear, clearly stated in Madrid Protocol that territory was not belong to them, but they just asked the American government, if possible, that they administer that area. But that area was famous during Second World War, because all those POW who escaped, they actually went to that place and goes to Philippines. So again, I can talk on and on and on.
Oh.
Any other question?
Yeah,
Is
sorry.
there another question? Ada lagi? Calling once? Calling twice?
Yeah, before you all left, going to leave afterwards, I'm going to hand over this copy of this treaty. It's not much, it's in Jawi, in Bahasa. But again, this is a testament saying that there are some missing documents, not available, but available here because you attend our podcast.
And this treaty, it's not something you can easily find.
Yeah.
Because he personally acquired a copy of the actual treaty and translated it as well.
Somebody even questioned me, this is legit or not legit? So what I did, I wrote again, I think I asked my daughter to help me to write to National Archive, can you help me please certify each and every document? And it costs a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And I get it certified, each and every document. So
even for Shari to get this copy, he had to pay. This was from UK?
Yeah, UK.
This was the UK archive. It wasn't even a Malaysian archive. So he found it internationally, what we couldn't find locally.
But Shari has, I would say, almost all the treaties and agreements.
Oh yes, it
Anything
does.
relating to North Borneo. So the collection is almost complete.
It's an amazing book.
Why it was not published and distributed just yet? Because as what Avtar said, it's really so interesting. Every day you find new missing pieces, you see. Suddenly I found another treaty dated 1846 that James Brooke actually held a concession of Mengkabong, you know. Mengkabong, 1846. 1946. Is it 1940? 1846. And the chartered company have to think how to take over back the concession. So they have to surrender Lawas. Lawas was used to be one of North Borneo, you know. So they have to give Lawas to Sarawak government and take back the Mengkabong concession. Yeah. So this is another history that never written in any textbook. So thank you.
So with this, if you want to find out more, when we put this up on YouTube later, I'll put in links for you to follow Shari, follow Avtar for more information. Because for me, I'm the level, just the top of the whole iceberg. Because if we were to go deep into it, it's going to be a whole rabbit hole that I'm not ready to go into. Anyway, this today has been a talk about Sulu. I hope it opened up your mind into just how complicated the situation is, just how misinformed we are, and how much information has been lost throughout the years. So again, if it wasn't for Shari and Avtar, a lot of this we wouldn't have recovered and we wouldn't know as what it is today. So thank you all for coming, and this has been the launch of What's the Story of Our History. Thank you so much.